Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you all enjoyed our Enviroscape Watershed video in preparations for our Earth Day week activities for Keep Harnett Beautiful. And today we're going to share with you another activity similar to that one, but one you can do yourself without our Enviroscape model. Today we're going to create an Enviroscape or a watershed using wax paper. So what you will need is a box of wax paper, several watercolor markers, doesn't matter what name brand, just make sure that they're washable markers, a squirt bottle containing just clean water, and a few paper towels. Sometimes we get a little bit messy and we need to clean up. So just a few simple supplies that we have right around our homes, within our offices, or in our kitchens. So the first thing that we need to do is everybody needs to tear off a square or a rectangle of wax paper. About 12 by 12 inches is all that we need. So once you have your square torn off from your wax paper, everyone needs to ball their wax paper up gently in a ball. And then we're going to take that wax paper and create our landscape by very gently smoothing it back out. We want to be sure that we don't flatten it back out completely and we leave some of those ridges and high points in there. So we'll give everybody just a second to create our landscape. All right, once we have our landscape of wax paper flattened out, which is going to represent our watershed, we're going to take our watercolor or washable markers and we're going to select at least 3 different colors. And these different colors are going to represent different pollutants that could possibly be within our watershed. The darker colors always work best for this demonstration. So what I want you to do is start with your first color, and I want you to pick some of the higher areas on your wax paper watershed or landscape, and I want you to color the high edges. So just, it doesn't have to be real neat, just anywhere that you see a crease or a bend, you can just start adding some color. Now, if you think about your communities, where we live, where we shop, where we worship, where we go to school, those are usually in our higher areas where we don't have to worry about flooding. And so we call these the ridge lines within our landscape. Or it could be what we call a watershed divide. Now remember, when we talked about a watershed, we shared that it was an area of land where all of the water travels in the same direction. And so that's what hopefully we're going to be able to see here on our wax paper watershed, is how water can move down these ridge lines through creeks and streams or tributaries of larger bodies of water, and how what we do within our local communities affects everyone downstream. So I'm moving on to my third color. And remember, I said these colors are important because they're going to represent different pollutants or potential pollutants within our watershed. So in this case, we're going to pretend that the purple is litter. Remember how when we did our Enviroscape demonstration that we just didn't really feel like disposing of our trash properly, so there was litter all throughout our watershed. And so we're going to say that the purple is the litter, and then we'll say the green, our neighbor Joe, he loves to tinker on his vehicles, but he hates to dispose of his oil properly. So when he changes the oil in his vehicles, he just dumps it in his backyard instead of recycling it properly. And then the red in this particular example, we'll say someone applied fertilizer to a lawn or a golf course or any other area where we want plants to grow without taking a soil sample first. And so they really applied more than what was needed and spent more money. And so the plants couldn't use all of the fertilizer that was applied. So now we have colored our wax paper watershed, and hopefully yours will look something like this. The more color, the better. All right, now that everyone has all of their watercolors colored on your wax paper watershed to represent your pollutants, we're going to take our squirt bottle, just like we did on our Enviroscape model, and we're going to create a rainstorm. All right, so we want to make sure that our squirt bottle is set on a nice even spray. We don't want a strong stream. A nice even spray is all that we need. We want to make sure that our desk area is clear from any other important papers or items that we might not want to get wet. And then we're going to use our squirt bottle to spray onto our wax paper to create just a nice, steady, soaking rain. All right, hopefully everybody has their wax paper watershed sprayed with their rainwater, and you all can start to see what is happening. Hopefully you will see the more that it rains, those pollutants start to run through that watershed, just like they did on our Enviroscape model. And sometimes even the watercolors start to blend together as they run through the watershed. So remember, that litter that we threw out there, that used motor oil that we threw out and didn't recycle correctly, or the fertilizer that we over applied, when it rained, those excess or unnecessary pollutants ran through our watershed, and as you can see here on our wax paper watershed model, they gathered in the low places. This could be the floodplain areas along our Cape Fear River that runs here through Harnett County. It could be our other lower lying areas within our communities along the creek banks. But all of these, as you can see, travel to those low-lying areas, enter those sources of water, and now we have these contaminants within the aquatic ecosystem. Now, there are several things that can happen as a result of this. If litter enters the aquatic ecosystem, if enough of it enters, it can actually deplete the dissolved oxygen within the water, and so the aquatic animals don't have the oxygen within the water that they need to survive. They oftentimes ingest this litter, which can cause health issues. They oftentimes also can get their heads stuck within some of the litter. It can cause them to choke or suffocate. So the litter that we leave behind that runs through our stormwater management systems and can eventually enter our waterways can definitely have a negative effect on wildlife, as well as the used motor oil and the fertilizers that aren't used correctly as well. So just like with the Enviroscape model, hopefully you all can see here on our wax paper watershed that you all have created for yourself that we can be a solution to pollution by simply being responsible and disposing of litter and other things that we don't need correctly. Thanks for joining us for our Keep Harnett Beautiful wax paper watershed activity.